Buenos dias, everybody. My name is Alex, and I'm going to talk about cryptocurrency and what I imagined, dreamed, and envisioned last night. And I think many other crypto people share similar sentiments, crypto enthusiasts. So, what is cryptocurrency? If you're watching this video, you probably already know. It's a form of forming identity contracts on the internet using computers to talk to each other and make encrypted agreements with each other that basically allow for the secure transmission of data between two parties or more parties. This is probably a terrible description, but the idea is that all the people in between me and you watching this video and you and your husband, wife, neighbor, whoever are they're gone, like banks are gone, or they're just much less necessary. And because all that work that's being done by people with machines and taking fees, governments taking taxes out from just a basic transaction, they're made more and more obsolete as those jobs are being done by the computers. So why is that exciting? Is it just taking away people's jobs? And is it just kind of a snarky stick it to the man plot by the nerds of the world? And the answer to that is I don't think so. And I think that's probably how it started. I think there's probably a lot of anger from computer programmers about the way that the money system is set up in the world and the culture of money hoarding by typically stingy people who are not really interested in making the world better, but more interested in fortifying their own accumulative capacity for dollars. So it doesn't incentivize the flow of cash and the upliftment of communities necessarily, unless it makes the guy who already has money even more money. So then this gets into like Charles Eisenstein's philosophy of having a growth economy as the only means of which it's possible to lend is if it gets an interest rate, which gets into the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve having an interest rate and having a growth-oriented industrial economy in general as a solution to progress, or the equation of economic growth to progress or human welfare. And as statistics have shown through the last half of the 20th century in the United States of America, that correlation is not it's not a creed. It's not true, and that we've had actually amazing growth. Like GDP has gone way up, but happiness has gone down actually, and health has gone down. And we now actually have a generation of people who are less healthy than they're expected to live my generation is expected to live less long than my parents' generation. And so those kind of uh, um, statistics throw a wrench in the narrative of progress in the typical historical notion of a industrial growth economy, which is uh, tied to the money system, which the money system drives, because the Federal Reserve lends money to the banks. It creates money out of thin air at an interest rate. So the Federal Reserve determines interest rates, and they say, we want to drive growth in the economy, so we're going to lower interest rates. So that means that banks have more room for profit on the loans that they give out, so that they have a better chance of returning the money to the Federal Reserve that the Federal Reserve created out of thin air, pumped money into the economy. So money is cheaper, so they give it out more freely, but then that drives inflation. So if they raise interest rates, then it kind of cools down the economy, so to speak, because money becomes more expensive. And I'm getting in over my head, but this is another Charles Eisenstein thing. He talks about having a negative interest rate, where money has a decay value on it. So there's a disincentive to accumulate money, and there's an incentive to invest it into assets. And for that reason, money becomes like an intermediary of it just becomes a tool rather than, it becomes more like a utility, like a public utility, than an asset class. And so similarly, in the concept of crypto allows for a decentralized Federal Reserve agreement between you and I and whoever else wants to join. And so for this reason, it's like a thought experiment. So the Federal Reserve was established by people in Jekyll Island. It was established by these rich guys in secrecy off the coast of South Carolina. And so they formed this institutional governing body, and it's actually a private corporation, but it works with the federal government, and it controls our money system. Whereas previously we were on the gold standard, and the stock market crashed in 1929, and that was used as an opportunity to establish the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which guarantees $100,000 on all banking deposits and all on bank accounts and stuff. Which it seems like a guarantee, but if you think about it, if the currency collapses and it's worthless, then $100,000 is not worth anything. So guarantee is not really. It's relative to the amount of trust that's placed in the currency itself. And if you look at historical examples of currency becoming valueless, it happens during times of crises, like the stock market crash, or in Germany in post World War I. But that's maybe besides the point. I'm curious about like currencies and economies and why they deflate. Or Alan Watts brought up this point. He said the stock market crashed in 1929, and all the industries were still there, the resources were still there, people were still there, but they were all out of work. And whereas before they were all working. So there was no difference in what the world had or what was possible, but there was a collectivized belief that we were suddenly poor because the stock market had crashed. And on paper we were poor, but in reality we still had all the stuff. So there's a disconnect between what is actually going on and the economy, quote unquote economy or stock market itself. So I think that cryptocurrency creates a transparent vehicle. It creates a possibility for a transparent peer-to-peer active economy where there isn't these potential nefarious third parties or doing things like manipulating the media into spreading panic or fear to drive down the markets while they're shorting the market and amping up their hedge fund or doing some kind of political ploy in Venezuela. You know, there's no way of knowing what they're doing. You know, so to have faith in the dollar bill, it's like you have to have faith that all these other nefarious actors who have large amounts of capital and clout are not being bad actors and driving the dollar into worthlessness. Which, if you look at the actual numbers, it appears that that's happening. If you just are into debt and GDP, if you just look at that in like the U.S., you can see that we've been at a deficit for a long time, and it doesn't look like we're not creating a surplus. Whereas China is in the opposite direction, owning much of our debt and allowing Americans to do things like invest in homes. So there's these other countries that were previously not industrialized, like China and Vietnam and India, who are becoming industrialized, and when they're going through a period of growth that is beyond what we are doing in the United States. It's basically the United States in the 1950s, or with 21st century internet technology. So it's like, because they're going from agriculture, where most people are farmers, into industrialized city centers, into urbanized city centers. So there's a mass influx of people trying to earn money and earning wealth, first generational wealth in these countries, and they're driven like hungry. It's in the culture too. America's kind of become a little complacent, and it's like, we did it first. It's fine. We can buy our houses on loans from China. But the currency is becoming less valuable. We have these monolith kind of institutional industries like, coal, oil, big ag, and livestock. But they're not really innovative. They're not innovative industries, and they're dinosaurs in a sense that they are not energetic. They're not energetically balanced, and by that I mean literally. Like if you look at the energy ROEI on those industries, you can see that they're just essentially extractive industries, and that America in the 1950s was prosperous because we were the world's leading exporter of oil, and that oil ran out, and so then the centers of power shifted in the world, and then we started to need to do things like pay for war and to fight war in Middle East to get their oil, or to establish bases in the Middle East to keep the previously established economy dominant and going, so there wasn't the primary source of energy pumped into the society. So then we have like all these financial tricks and America's wealth. You can own stuff, so it's neo-colonialism. So you own other countries' resources and you start forming multinational corporations and you own stuff that way. And once a country gets wealthy, then they can go buy other countries who are quote unquote less wealthy, who are willing to accept a low price for something that they themselves can't turn into a profit, but a corporation can come in and take the raw resource and turn it into a tenfold profit, and the other people are they think that they're getting a good deal for getting like whatever it is for their land, like $100,000 or whatever, $1 million, and it's actually not a good deal because it's not going to be worth anything because it's just cash, and they can't buy their land back necessarily. They can go move to the city, and so that kind of started to get into a rant. But basically, we've had like a kind of imperialist, growth-oriented economy that's run by these call them like bureaucrats almost. They're bureaucrats / like money lenders. It's like politicians, like aristocratic politicians who are or it's not to frame them in a negative sense, but it's just the context of in which the world has been. But now there's the capacity for you and I to collaborate and form crypto factions, so to speak. Like if I wanted to invest in land and we can form a smart contract with each other and say, hey, I'll pay for half of this, you pay for this half of the land, and this is my responsibility, this is your responsibility. And then we can get loans, and you can get a loan for your financial situation, and I can get a loan for my financial situation, and we can get a loan on the property together. Then we have the ability to not need a bank, but because it's just you, me, and this other third party. And assuming all this works, if we have collateral in the system, and people are willing to take on the risk, so evaluating the asset of say I wanted you and I wanted the piece of land that's valued at $1 million, and we each put in $100,000, and we get a loan, so it's 20% down on each of our $500,000 halves, and we get a loan from somebody, and the piece of land is the collateral at $1 million. So that person holds the deed still, and they just give us essentially like rent to own conditions, terms. This is what I'm stoked about, and it seems like it's moving in that direction. There's this DeFi, decentralized finance, and it seems to be running through Ethereum mostly as the means of doing this. And so it's like, well, why Ethereum? Is it just this kind of bullshit thing? And I was trying to think about this, and like, maybe it is bullshit, Ethereum. I was like, what's the difference between, say, Ethereum and this, these decentralized finance things versus, say, a bank or something? And one initial difference I can see is that banks often have a delay period when you want to do something, like you want to transfer money, it takes like 3 days to do it. And at that point, you're just like, fuck, like I wanted to do it right now. I didn't want to transfer it in 3 days from now, because then that's the 3-day delay to the whole thing. If you can't do it right away, it's kind of like, maybe I should just have it in cash so I can do it right away. Or maybe I should do it in another currency. So I think that's where it's valuable. But in addition to that, it's valuable in that it allows you to form contracts they call smart contracts. So if you and I wanted to buy that piece of land together, we can set up terms with each other and say, if you can't pay for this or something, then I'll loan you a little bit of money, and we'll put that on the tab, and so then that will be part of the smart contract, and we can keep a ledger together where it says, okay, you're behind this much, you owe me this much interest, yada yada, you can pay it off, or if I need money from you, I can take it, I can have this much interest. So then there's like a support network, and then you can also say like, okay, let's crowdfund this project. The owner of the house says, let's crowdfund it, let's put it online, see how many other people are willing to buy into this. So then the owner of the property raises cash for the project and shares some of the interest burden. So it's not all $1 million tied up, and he can also raise more money, so it has more money down. He's in the process of selling it, so then he becomes like a bank and can expedite the sale of the asset, as opposed to having an actual bank. You can become your own bank and then form your own terms. So that's where it cuts it out. And so there's all these products being developed right now around this space, and it's called DeFi, or Decentralized Finance. And it's actually pretty amazing. There's a lot of companies out there, and it's at the beginning stages, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty around safety, and I definitely have similar concerns around safety, security, not getting hacked, or the money getting gone, hacked. And so I might make another video on hacking, but this is just like a little kind of primer on decentralized finance and what I think of it and where I see it's going. Ethereum is like the coin that everybody's using on this thing, if you look at the companies that are out there. And I'm by no means an expert, but I wanted to share. It's like practical excitement. It's excitement because it's like, just on a personal note, I feel like no kinship to these organizations like Charles Schwab or Morgan Stanley or Wells Fargo or Bank of America. And in fact, I think they're kind of nefarious because they choose what projects are important. And so they are essentially equating value based on their perspective, and they're looking at it through a lens of usually pure profit at all costs, and so that drives the industrial machine, so to speak. So I also think it leaves those large institutions are blind to the local neighborhood, and they don't have eyes on the ground, so to speak. They're in offices and they're investing in large multinational projects. Whereas if you look around in communities, there's like potential opportunities all over the place, and especially in third world countries. Like, this might be more relevant for third world countries where there isn't established markets, and and for quote unquote first world countries, it could be relevant for people who are not looking to join the corporate world, and to thrive and prosper in a way that is not harmful to themselves or other people or the planet, and can live lives that they are more of their own discretion and choosing, and not be locked into things like mortgages and these kind of financial tricks that are placed upon people that keep them kind of locked in these. They keep them people powerless because they can't. People they don't think they have a choice out, but this whole thing does. So it provides hope. Because everyone who buys into it is just a person just like you or me, and the more they buy into it, I don't think they can necessarily control it or influence it, because they can't add more coins to it. One, but so I guess it's up for debate, because China owns a lot of Bitcoin. Actually, China owns like 50% of Bitcoin, which a lot of people don't know. I didn't know. So I guess the question is, how are we going to do this? It's kind of like AI. It's like, how are we going to do this? If it's going to happen, we need to participate in it and make it and move it and make it our own, so that we're not getting lost of someone else's poorly discerned creation, and it has nothing to do with us. So there's I think it's a possibility to take back the power, by forming the world that we want to live in, and so I'm excited about it, and maybe we'll get into programming or making some kind of cryptocurrency of my own, so that I can establish contracts that work for both me and my friends and whoever else that I encounter in the world who wants to work together. These are my thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed, and bye.